Hello, it's Aaliyah from the Song of the Winds. I hope you're doing really well. Today I wanted to talk about something completely different from anything I have done on this channel so far, and it's about ghost stories. I find that quite often I'm looking for ghost stories on YouTube, and I kind of go down a bit of a ghost story rabbit hole where I just can't stop watching. And recently when I was filming my witchy history environment, lifestyle video, I'll link it now, I remembered there was a whole bunch of ghosts that I've encountered in my life, and it was mainly when I was younger, and I haven't sort of really spoken about them for a long period of time, so I thought I'd do that today. So probably the most intense ghost experience that I've ever had was at my parents' house. Next door there was a house and when I was a teenager, probably 15 or 16, around about that age, the lady that lived there, she did night work and she needed a babysitter, and because I was just in school and I could study at night time, I would just go next door and I'd watch her two kids while they were sleeping, and then she would come home sometime in the middle of the night and I would hop back over the fence and go home and go to sleep. The house had always given me the creeps. There was something about it that was just kind of off. One thing that it just wasn't me that experienced it, but anyone that lived in that house, we'd sort of known the previous tenants of that house, but they always had trouble with the lights. Like the light bulbs would just go and they would just sort of blow in succession, and they could never actually figure out any problem with the electrics. They had the wiring checked and they had the fuse box checked, and there was nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and it was just like a consistent problem for years. So it was always kind of creepy, because there was typically always one or two lights out in the house. And the youngest kid, Madeline, she was probably, I don't know, somewhere between 15 months and two years old. And she used to wake up in the middle of the night and she'd kind of freak me out a bit. She'd stand up in her cot and I'd hear her crying and I would go in there. And she'd be standing up in her cot and just pointing at this space in the middle distance in the corner, which was just kind of dark and shadowy, as corners are. And she would just point at it and she'd sort of shake and she'd point and she'd say, "Blue, blue." And I had no idea what that was meant to mean. She was very small. She was just learning to talk. So I usually just sort of chalked it up to baby talk, but it was sort of creepy, when you've got someone pointing at something that they definitely see and you can't see. It's not good. So I'd try and get her back down to sleep and stand there and pat her for a bit, and I just didn't like being in her room. It was really quite creepy. And aside from when this lady would go out to work at night, occasionally she'd go out for a night out and she'd be home, really quite late, maybe 3 in the morning or something. So I'd usually have to sleep because I couldn't stay up that long. So I'd sleep in her bed, and many times, probably 7 at least, I woke up and I swear there was someone standing over me, and it looked kind of like an old man wearing a flannelette, a dusty kind of flannelette, shirt, and it would only ever sort of be there for a couple of seconds. And the first few times that it happened, I just assumed it was because I was in a creepy house. I was creeping myself out, and I wasn't sleeping well because I was kind of keeping an ear out for the kids, and I was expecting the woman to come home really at any time, so I didn't want to be too asleep. Yeah, so that happens. That was kind of creepy. And the light bulbs, coupled with the light bulbs, coupled with the child being able to see, something in the house, just, freaked me out. So one night I had my boyfriend over, and we were just sitting on the couch and we were just kind of making out, as you do when you're a teenager. And then next thing you know, all of the light bulbs from the end of the house, so kitchen, kids room, hallway, lounge room, just blew in a succession like that. And it just sort of came, and as it was coming, it was like a wave of energy coming towards us, and it was really intense. I've got mega goosebumps just even remembering this. And we were on the couch and it was enough for us both to pull our legs up. It was really intense, and you just felt this energy I can only describe as a ghost, sort of circling around the couch, there for us. And we didn't know what else to do except be what do you want? Like, we're not doing anything kind of thing. Yeah, and it was super creepy. And it sort of happened like as we began to make out, which I thought was really interesting. But we were like both fairly young at that stage, and pretty much within like a few minutes of that having happened and everything kind of settling back down to normal, but still being in a house with like blown light bulbs, we just had the light of the TV by then. That wasn't affected by the power, but his dad was outside honking to like pick him up, so he had to leave me there in the house. And so I sat on the couch and then just tried to like talk to this, you know, ghost, thinking that I might be able to get some type of sense out of it. And I just got the feeling that it was more like protective about me. It wasn't really to freak us out. I think it was actually to freak out my boyfriend, like hands off her kind of thing. Maybe the ghost thought that I was in trouble or something. I'm not really sure. Yeah, but like creepy stuff like that happened for a long period of time. And when I got home the next day, I told my mother about it, because it was just, it was so intense. And she's seen ghosts a lot in her life, and we've seen a few things like around that area, like in the yard and looking out windows and stuff, since I was very little. So I knew that she'd be quite open to me telling her that. And I described what this old man looked like, and what Madeline had been saying in her room, you know, pointing to the corner and saying blue, 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 and what this man looked like when I would wake up and I'd see him sort of standing over me. And she just went like, ugh, all the colour drained out of her face. And she told me about what our houses, all of that was like, was bush. They bought there, you know, I think in the 70s, but back in probably the turn of the century, maybe like 1920s, that was, part of it was cleared. And that was actually like a lumber yard. And it makes so much sense when you think about it, because there were so many workplace injuries back then. People would just die, and it was not even like really that much of a surprise. You know, like crushed by a tree, or, you know, cut by some horrible machine or something like that. And it didn't occur to me at the time, because he looked kind of old, but his hair was actually red, and blue is the name that is often given like as a nickname for redheads. And he had this dusty flannelette, you know, jacket on and shirt on and everything, in this red hair. And I think he was actually perhaps a lumberjack that was killed on that space. And that probably explains why, for some reason, the house next door had a significantly different feel to the land that our house was on. So I think that must have been, you know, where the poor man had died. So because I was there so much babysitting, I think he actually sort of took a bit of a fatherly, grandfatherly kind of shine to me. So when my boyfriend was there, you know, he was just like, get out, she's too young kind of thing, you know, get out. And I think that's actually what happened. And after that, if light bulbs would go in the house, I'd just kind of be like, look, no, chill, you know, you need to just let me do my thing. I need to do some schoolwork. I don't need you to turn out the lights tonight. Like, I just need to do some stuff. And after that, it just began to settle down, and it didn't really happen again. So that's probably like the most intense experience that I've had. But when the light bulbs bursting and that energy coming down the hallway, like it was visual in a very kind of like murky, sort of misty sense. Like it wasn't actually a person, but it was like swirling, misty, kind of greyish energy that was around us at that time. So I think that was how his ghost was, you know, manifesting. And then when I was probably, I don't know, like between 5 and 7, I'd say, my sister and I would sleep over at my grandmother's house. And she lived in like a fairly old part of town, and the house was really old, and you can just imagine like it had been, you know, it had been there for a long time, and who knows what that land had seen. But she had lots of pictures up in the house. And it was a kind of a small house, so when my sister and I stayed over, we had to sleep on a mattress on the floor in the lounge room. And there was like, I think we only stayed over there like 2 or 3 times, because it just began to freak me out so much that I stopped wanting to, you know, go over there and stay for the night. But the people in the pictures would sort of come to life, and yeah, that wasn't cool. And I think they were family, but it just always seemed like really, really intense. It didn't seem like particularly, you know, like, oh hey, you're my great granddaughter. It seemed, yeah, it didn't seem cool at all. Like there was just a weird kind of energy about that house. And yeah, it's kind of gone a bit blurry now as the years go on, but I remember being just like really, really quite scared, and there was like a lot of bad energy there. I've had some truly terrifying experiences with Ouija boards. I will not use them now. I don't actually trust myself or the people that I would do it with well enough that we could keep everything contained. We played around with them a bit when I was younger, and I think we actually let some pretty nasty stuff through. There was one spirit that a friend of mine and I were talking to for a long period of time, and we most definitely were talking to the same person each time, because we would you know, create these like questions that only that same spirit from last time would have been able to answer. And yeah, one time they actually like warned us that this pack of men were like coming out through the park. It had never happened before. You know, we would just always hang out in this park at night, and there was never anyone there. It was a really quiet neighborhood, and her parents were really not the best parents. They just let us go off and do anything and never stopped to you know, wonder where we were or like what time of night it was or anything like that. But the spirit, you know, warned us to like go home, like get out now. And as we got that message, we heard this like group of guys like coming through the park just out of the pitch blackness, and it was really, really intense. And then about 30 seconds after that happened, her parents appeared like at the park saying, okay, it's time to go home now, you've got to come inside now. And it was just so bizarre because they had never done anything like that before. Like we would roll in God knows when, and they didn't even seem to notice. But for them to have been out, it was like we were really being looked out for, which was great. So I guess having said that, there's been some creepy stuff, and there's been some really nice connections where I think we were warned that something very bad could have happened if we had have stayed around, and we probably wouldn't have been able to get home fast enough before something bad happened. And then here's kind of a weird thing. So when I was a young teenager, I was quite the goth. So I had like a mosquito net in my bedroom, and it was this lovely, I actually kind of wish I still had it. It was this lovely like, you know, flowy black thing that would hang from the ceiling, and I liked to, you know, sleep with it around me at night, and I'd always, you know, have it closed up. It was all very goth, you know, lovely. And because I was still living at home at the time, my mother would make me lunch every day, and I usually wouldn't eat all of it. So I'd end up with this like school bag full of the things that I haven't eaten for like several days. And one thing she used to make me was like Vita Wheats. I don't know what they're branded in other countries, but they're like a healthy cracker, and she would put like you know, butter and Vegemite. And for anyone who hasn't eaten Vegemite, don't be scared, it's really nice. Butter and Vegemite, and for some reason I just, you know, I wouldn't always want to eat them, so I'd end up with like several packets of these all wrapped up in my bag. And one night I was dead asleep in my little, you know, goth cocoon, and the next thing I know, I got woken up because one of those damn things had dropped clean out of the sky and like hit me on my shoulder. And I think it was like this ghost just saying, stop being so bloody disrespectful and wasteful with food. Like seriously, you need to like eat your food. There is literally no way that could have been up on the ceiling, and even if it was, somehow tangled up all that way on the ceiling in my my mosquito net. It just couldn't happen, you know, like that's just not a thing. So from then on, I made sure I ate all my lunch, or I just told her I didn't need quite so much so that we had less food waste. That's probably like the strangest ghost story I have, because yeah, why would you drop food on someone? But that absolutely happened, and yeah, it's kind of weird. But that's yeah, I think there has been other experiences, but they're the main kind of ones that stick out in my head. So if you've got any ghost stories, any of your experiences, tag me because I'd really like to hear them. Well, I thank you for watching. You take care, and I will see you again real soon. Okay, bye.